Canelo Alvarez, the zone, they got to do something. We unpack, coming to you live, Boxing Ego Unpack. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the super chats, channel donations, the Venmo donations, and the Patreon family. Man, a new media. What can I say? Very interesting times in the middleweight division. I feel there's a lot of pressure on Canelo Alvarez. I want to give you guys the latest. If you're new, consider subscribing. Now, we remember the ESPN reported, and a lot of people reporting, Canelo Alvarez could consider fighting Demetrius Andrade September 14th. And to me, I said it sounded like a ruse for obvious reasons. Again, my thought process is this. This whole franchise title that they came up with the WBC did not need to happen if Canelo was going to, in fact, fight Demetrius Andrade. Because at that point in time, Canelo Alvarez needed one belt to become undisputed. And you could easily justify Canelo not fighting Jermall Charlo, his mandatory, with the WBC, if Canelo had every intentions of fighting Demetrius Andrade, because as we know, unifications trump any type of mandatory situation, because it would be not only a unification, undisputed unification, which is a great thing for boxing, adds clarity to the division. So the fact that they came up with the franchise title, basically Canelo got stripped. You know, this is a new way for the WBC to justify it, and it's like almost sugar-coated, so Canelo didn't look like the villain, and so it didn't look like he was terrified or scared of Jermall Charlo or something like that. But in essence, he got stripped. Now there's some new updated news, and we unpacked. I got to talk about it. Smash the like button. So Dan Rafael, ESPN, he just posted this. Middleweight champion Canelo Alvarez prospect of collecting all 4 belts to become the undisputed champion took a hit recently when the WBC stripped him. So be clear, the WBC stripped him and, quote, elevated him to its so-called franchise champion. And now his IBF belt is in jeopardy because he has missed the window to seek an exception to a mandatory title defense he was ordered to make against Sergey Derevyanchenko. Negotiations of some kind of deal were due to be completed by June 15th. But the two camps haven't even talked about a fight. If Canelo Alvarez vacates, or if he's stripped, then Derevyanchenko would likely fight for the vacant title. The next leading contender in the IBF rankings is former champion Gennady Golovkin, who would be in the market for a fall foe if he doesn't meet Canelo Alvarez for a third time. Wow. So let's unpack this. We unpack, coming to you live, Boxing Ego Unpacked. Bad look for DAZN, bad look for Golden Boy, and bad look for Canelo. This is, in essence, is exactly the same scenario that happened with Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin was in a first fight with Canelo Alvarez. I went and covered that fight for you guys, and it was close. There was controversy. It ended in a draw. He was due up to fight Canelo again in May of last year to settle the score. Canelo Alvarez failed a drug test. He blames the meat. He said he was in Mexico and there was tainted meat, and he's a victim of that. Either way, he had clenbuterol in his system, so he got banned for 6 months. 6 months suspension, no fine. The Canelo Triple G2 fight that was scheduled, they already had a press tour for it, got canceled for May Cinco de Mayo weekend. They couldn't do it because Canelo could not compete. He was suspended for failing a drug test, because the way the Nevada State Athletic Commission looked like it, they looked at it as, whether you're telling the truth, we have no way of proving it, but you still had a banned substance in your system. So we can't let that slide. You're a first time offender, So they gave him a slap on the wrist that don't happen again. Canelo later gotten year-round VADA testing, like 24/7 or some shit, and he served a 6-month suspension, right? In the meantime, Gennady Golovkin said he wanted to continue fighting on that particular day. He said, I've already been in training camp. I got to release this training camp. I didn't know Canelo was going to fail a drug test. So Canelo was on the sideline dealing with his situation with the clenbuterol. Golovkin said he still wanted to fight. He was mid-camp when he got the news that Canelo failed a drug test. So the IBF, Golovkin at the time had all the belts except for the WBO. And at that time, Billy Joe Saunders had that belt. So the IBF said, hey, you're due up to fight your mandatory Sergey Derevyanchenko. He's been fighting eliminators. We've been stalling him off and holding him off for big fights with you and Canelo. And we were going to get out of the way for the Canelo Triple G2 fight because it's a big fight and it's what's right for boxing. Seeing how Canelo is on the sidelines suspended and you still want to fight, now we're ordering you to fight your mandatory Sergey Derevyanchenko. Right? Golovkin was like, hey, no, guys, hey, no, man. And he had no intentions of fighting Sergey Derevyanchenko. An experienced amateur, a guy with power at that time, was undefeated. So Golovkin was like, no, I want to find my own opponent. I couldn't control Canelo Alvarez, failing a drug test, which is true. So he made a deal with the IBF. He said that he was going to fight a fighter of his choice just to get, this off his chest, get this camp off his chest, right? And they picked Vanes Martirosyan, a 154-pounder, moved him up to 160. He had 3.5 weeks to prepare, and he hadn't fought in 2 years. He had been on a long layoff, and he had left his old promoter or advisor, Al Heyman, and he was with Don King now. So no activity, hadn't fought in over 2 years, and he was coming off of a loss in a lower division. That's who Golovkin chose to fight instead of fighting his mandatory Sergey Derevyanchenko, right? So people are like, oh, that's kind of bogus, but whatever. This is all Canelo's fault anyway, so people kind of just let it slide. They said, okay, whatever, Golovkin can fight who he wants, seeing how Canelo was the reason the first fight got canceled. Even though we knew what the outcome was going to be, And just so you guys know, we'll pull it up for you. Vanes Martirosyan, 36-4-1 current record. So he fought Gennady Golovkin in 2018. New media, I'd like to show you the work. He fought Golovkin May, Cinco de Mayo. He was supposed to fight Canelo, but he failed a drug test. And as you guys see right here, see, he got knocked out by Golovkin. And he was coming off of a loss to Erislandy Lara of Cuba. He hadn't fought from May 21st, 2016, all the way until May of 2018. So basically 2 years, a 2-year layoff and a switch of, he had like a new promotional team behind him, right? And he only fought one time that year against Erislandy Lara, and he previously hadn't fought since September of the previous year. So this wasn't a guy that was active. For whatever reason, Golovkin, instead of fighting Sergey Derevyanchenko, chose to fight Vanes Martirosyan. Probably because he didn't want to be in a risky fight, because he knew Canelo would be eligible in August to come back from his suspension. So he wanted a sure shot. I'm going to knock this guy out. No type of struggle, attempt, fight just to get rid of this camp, make a little bit of money, and stay safe for Canelo. Okay, as a result, he didn't fight Derevyanchenko. Canelo was eligible to come back in August of the next year. And guess what? Golovkin chose to not fight his mandatory Sergey Derevyanchenko, to instead fight Canelo Alvarez, as you guys see in a rematch. And people are like, oh, it's a big fight. What do you expect? But the thing is, instead of fighting Vanes Martirosyan, Triple G could have fought against Derevyanchenko. The Martirosyan fight had nothing to do with it. And if Golovkin is supposed to be the boogeyman, why can't you fight a guy who had worked his way up the ranking? He appeared dangerous, but he hadn't fought no one like a Golovkin. So why not? That's a solid fight. Anyway, Golovkin ended up fighting Canelo and losing a majority decision. And he took some time off. HBO went out of business, and he came back, said, I'm fighting with DAZN, announced he's partnered with DAZN, and he fought Steve Rolls. So that is getting you guys caught up to speed. So now Golovkin is 37 years old, and the best names on his resume are at best controversial, you know, in nature, the outcomes. You know, the Canelo fights, Canelo and Jacobs are by far his best wins, you know, or his best elite names on his resume, and they both have some controversy behind it. I thought Jacobs really beat him, you know. So he's 37 years old, waiting on Canelo. This is bad, man. So he didn't fight Derevyanchenko. He didn't fight Jermall Charlo. The WBC after that said, hey, so this was the IBF. IBF told him to fight Derevyanchenko. Didn't do it. WBC told Golovkin, hey, fight Jermall Charlo. Winner gets Canelo. He didn't want to do that either, right? Fast forward to current day. Now, Canelo Alvarez just beat Danny Jacobs for the belt, and he was supposed to file for an exemption to have a voluntary defense of his choice if he wanted to not fight his mandatory. His team didn't do that. So now he's in jeopardy of possibly being stripped of his title. Not a good look, you know, and that's what ESPN is talking about. Again, here, he hasn't even negotiated with Sergey Derevyanchenko's people. No deal has been reached. So if rules are followed, they're going to go to a purse bid. And if, from what I understand, Canelo doesn't even want to fight against Derevyanchenko, you know, maybe it's above it. It's like, you know, risky guy, doesn't really do anything. I don't know if DAZN wants to fight, but these are the rules. I don't know if Canelo thinks he's Steven Seagal above the law, doesn't have to fight, you know, who they tell him to fight as champion. But this whole situation is a mess because he just basically got stripped, as you guys see. It said the WBC stripped him and elevated him as the so-called franchise champion. What Dan Rafael and ESPN is saying is he didn't want to fight Jermall Charlo, so they came up with another belt, which is a whole separate story and creates confusion and blurred lines in the middleweight division. So he just got stripped a couple weeks back, the week of Charlo's fight in Houston that I covered for you guys. And now he run the risk of, if he doesn't fight Sergey Derevyanchenko, getting stripped of the belt he just beat Danny Jacobs for in May. Horrible. Horrible. This is not a good look. I've heard of people like Floyd Mayweather, like beating a guy and then just getting rid of all the belts because he doesn't have to pay the sanction fees and he's bigger than the belt. But this is a bad look for Canelo. Canelo already vacated his belt in 2016. It gave the WBC belt instead of fighting Golovkin, who was his then mandatory after he beat Miguel Cotto, right? It's like people are trying to create their own rules instead of just giving the fans and the sanctioning bodies just follow, you know, playing nice and playing fair and doing what you're supposed to do. And it is creating all kinds of commotion, you know. How can Canelo fight Rocky Fielding, but Sergey Derevyanchenko is out of the question? Is Derevyanchenko any less known or less of a fight than Rocky Fielding? In fact, in my opinion, I'm not saying Derevyanchenko would beat Canelo, but I think it would be a better fight than Rocky Fielding, who got annihilated. I think it would be a better fight than Amir Khan, who we knew wasn't going to be durable at 155, you know, or James Kirkland, who was chinny. You know, these could be good fights, you know, so it's really no excuse. What's the point of even fighting? What's the point of fighting if you're going to let him strip you your very next fight? And I understand Canelo's rich. He don't need a belt. But the problem I have is Canelo specifically said that he wanted to be undisputed. And he was one belt away. He was one belt away. And he lost the became franchise titleist or whatever. Let me see if I can find it. Look, Canelo says he will be undisputed at middleweight. See? It's all documented. New media, all this stuff is documented. I've talked about this. He says he wanted to be undisputed this year. Here's another article. Canelo versus Jacobs. Canelo focused on becoming undisputed middleweight champion. This is what he said. I'm very happy. I'm very content. He said he's making history. What's next? He said he wants another challenge, etc. On fighting Demetrius Andrade for the undisputed. That's the goal. Whoever has the title, it doesn't matter. Our goal is to unify all the belts, become the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. We're going to sit with our team and we'll come up with a decision. So he said this numerous times. Here's another video. He said it before the Jacobs fight. He said it after the Jacobs fight. His goal was to become undisputed. Now, all of a sudden, when it comes time to becoming undisputed, what's the deal? Like, what gives? Because he made it complicated with the WBC franchise thing. And the reason I'm saying him is I know Golden Boy and Team Canelo had something to do with it, because he has not once spoke out against it. He has not said, hey, I don't agree to this. I want to fight Charlo. So that lets me know that he actually is going along with this. Because if he wasn't, then why would he not say, hey, pump your brakes. The WBC made this decision. I want to fight Charlo. You know, we could settle it right now. You know, and then the other thing is you have Canelo Alvarez, who Demetrius Andrade just won, and he had an easier time against Mad Selesky than Daniel Jacobs did. And guess what? He said he will fight Canelo. Look, we're going to bring it all up. I've told you, new media. And then they name dropped him. They name dropped Caleb Smith, Kovalev, and Andrade. Look, Canelo considering Andrade. July 4th of July, some fireworks. Eric Gomez, president of Golden Boy, exchanged messages with Andrade's promoter on Tuesday, spoke to him on the phone to gauge Andrade's interest in fighting. Andrade's team already came back and said that they would take the fight. They're open. They're definitely all ears. Look, Gomez says, yes, I had a conversation with Eddie. I've had several conversations with a few people about opponents. There are a few options out there for Canelo, Gomez told ESPN. We're checking out everything. Canelo has a few options, and we're exploring all the options, and we'll make a decision soon. This is a bad look. Canelo said he wanted to be undisputed. This was his dream. This was his goal. This was the dream he was trying to realize. Now he's running the risk of being stripped of the IBF because it doesn't sound like he has interest in fighting Derevyanchenko, right? The WBC, you know, he has to fight. As far as I'm concerned, he has to fight Charlo and Andrade to be undisputed at middleweight. There's no way the WBC can just create another belt and the champions and the mandatory, the people, Canelo, we've been wanting to see Canelo fight Charlo, and now all of a sudden he just don't have to fight him. It doesn't just disappear like that. The other thing is this, as you guys see, the next person in line, let's say Canelo's like, hey, I'm too big for this. I'm not fighting no fucking mandatory. I'm not fighting Derevyanchenko. Cool, right? The next person in line, Gennady Golovkin, right? Per the IBF rankings, is Gennady Golovkin. And it's going to look extremely bad. This is just a bad look for both Canelo as well as Gennady Golovkin. Because let's say Canelo passes up on the fight. Golovkin already passed up on the Sergey Derevyanchenko fight. So if he does it again, it's going to look like he doesn't want to fight nobody. Especially if he does it again against the same guy, Sergey Derevyanchenko. Especially if he does it to opt to fight Jaime Munguia, which is a 154 pounder. So that's just mind blowing if DAZN allows that to happen. So basically what you're telling me is instead of Gennady Golovkin getting his old belt back, the IBF belt, a belt he once captured and once held from beating David Lemieux, he would rather fight Jaime Munguia. Jaime Munguia, who's a 154 pounder, hasn't done anything at 160. That's bad. That's bad. Look, the highest rated people are Derevyanchenko. There was no one rated at number 2. So the next highest rated person would be Golovkin. Wow. So if Derevyanchenko, they're going to go down the list. That's how ratings work. If Canelo chooses to get rid of the belt or vacate the belt or get stripped of the belt, then the highest rated people on that list, this is the newest rankings with the International Boxing Federation, IBF, Sergey Derevyanchenko, and no one's in the number 2 versus Gennady Golovkin will be ordered. And if Golovkin opts to fight somebody outside of Derevyanchenko, then they just go down the list. It'll look like it'll be Derevyanchenko versus this guy Kamil Serchmeta or whatever, who is a guy with 4 knockouts that people said was linked to fighting Golovkin at one point. This is a mess, and I can't wait to see how DAZN plans on handling this situation, because Golovkin versus Jaime Munguia, what does that really mean though? You know, in my opinion, let's see. It doesn't really mean anything. He's 33-0, 26 knockouts. But as you guys see, he's a super welterweight. He fights at 154 where he's a champion. His last fight versus Dennis Hogan, he arguably lost. He won a majority decision, right? Bad look. Bad look. Look at this is the guys he was fighting. You know? They're not common names. He was fighting in Mexico, and I have no problem with that, because he's 22. He's just doing his thing, you know. But look, 54, 53. These are the weights he's fought at. Fought at 47. He fought at 150. He has never fought at 160. Look, he fought at 138. His debut was at 138.5. So he has never fought at 160. Confirmed. So if Golovkin would rather fight a 154-pounder on DAZN that started off at 138, you get what I'm saying? He'd rather fight him than fight Derevyanchenko for a title. You know, I don't know what their standpoint is if Canelo and Golovkin fight. I don't know if they'll stall out the mandatory. I don't know. We have to wait. We'll have to see where the cards fall. But this is an interesting conundrum for everybody involved. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. But there's a lot of pressure. The walls are closing in on Canelo and Triple G to make their decisions, to see what they want to do in the middleweight division. But Demetrius Andrade seems like an easy solution. But it's apparent they don't want to fight him. They don't want to fight the top black fighters, it looks like. Triple G and Canelo. They don't want to fight Andrade or Charlo. You know, why would you be looking down at Jaime Munguia when Andrade's right there? And he's been calling out Canelo and Triple G since they were both at 154. Triple G wasn't at 54, but Canelo was at 54, being called out by the 154-pound champion Andrade at that time. And Canelo never fought him. He never fought Charlo. So this is a long thing that's been brewing between Demetrius Andrade and Jermall Charlo. They could have all fought at 154. You know, same thing with Triple G. He'd been called out by Demetrius Andrade as well, when Andrade wasn't even a middleweight at the time. Andrade was still at 54. Very interesting situation. Let me know how you think it plays out. Cannot wait, new media. I cannot wait to see what is decided here, because it's getting real interesting. We're going to see who wants to smoke and who doesn't. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. If you are new, consider subscribing. New media. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.